back to Biz Jet TV. It's Fab Poli here today. We're going to be talking about a Lear Jet 35 accident that happened in New Jersey in 2017. Before we get into the analysis of this accident, what happened and what we can learn from it, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to Biz Jet TV if you haven't done so already. This is all about business aviation. Lots of information on this channel. Have a hunt round after you've watched this episode and see what else you can find here that will be of use to you and help you in your aircraft purchase, or if you're just an enthusiast, just to learn more about private aviation. Fascinating business. Now, also, if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up, and we'd love to hear your comments. So please comment below at the end of this episode. We'd love to hear your suggestions and remarks and etc. So let's get into today's episode about this Lear 35A, which crashed. This crash happened on the 15th of May 2017. Interesting dynamic. We're just going to go launch into a video now made by the NTSB about this accident, where you'll see all the graphics and everything and happened, and you also see a little footage at the end of the actual crash, and then I'll come back in and give you my take on what happened here. So let's get into the footage of this video from the NTSB. Off we go.
On May 15, 2017, about 3:29 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, a Lear Jet 35A departed control flight while flying the ILS Runway 6 Circle to Land Runway 1 approach at the Teterboro Airport in Teterboro, New Jersey. The captain and the second in command died. No one on the ground was injured. The airplane was destroyed by impact forces and post-crash fire. The Part 91 positioning flight departed the Philadelphia International Airport, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, bound for Teterboro about 3:04 p.m. The straight line distance from Philadelphia to Teterboro was about 80 nautical miles, and the flight lasted about 25 minutes. The flight to Teterboro was the crew's third and last planned trip for the day. The company had designated the second in command as a second in command 0, which meant that he could only perform pilot monitoring duties. Company policy required the captain to always be the pilot flying when flying with the second in command. However, the cockpit voice recording indicated the second in command was the pilot flying for all but the final 15 seconds of the accident flight. For most of the flight, the captain instructed the second in command in flying the airplane, including flight basics such as altitude and airspeed. The cockpit voice recording also indicated that the crew failed to complete any of the required checklists during the flight, contrary to published guidance in company manuals. The captain filed an Instrument Flight Rules flight plan which requested altitude of 27,000 feet for a planned distance of about 120 nautical miles, with an estimated time en route of 28 minutes. The crew's planned route is depicted in white. Air traffic control cleared them to fly at 4,000 feet. They were cleared for a slightly shorter route, shown in blue. The white arrow indicates the airplane's position and heading, and the magenta line shows the airplane's actual ground track. During the climb and level off at 4,000 feet, the captain instructed the second in command to keep the airspeed below the FAA restriction of 250 knots for flight below 10,000 feet. Radar data indicated that the crew exceeded the airspeed restriction multiple times during the 25-minute flight. About 8 minutes into the flight, when the airplane was only about 54 miles from the Teterboro Airport, the captain requested a higher altitude, not realizing how close they were to the airport. The controller denied the request, saying it would require the airplane be turned away from Teterboro to be resequenced.
452 Delta Alpha, any chance you can get higher?
452 Delta Alpha, unable higher. I would have to spin you back around and sequence you with the rest of the traffic going into Teterboro.
About 2 minutes later, when the airplane was about 48 nautical miles from the Teterboro Airport, air traffic control began vectoring the airplane for the ILS Runway 6 Circle to Runway 1 approach to the Teterboro Airport.
Clear 452 Delta Alpha, New York approach, Newark altimeter 2975, fighting 020, vector ILS 6, Circle 1.
Okay, we got 299 here, or excuse me, what was that again? Say that again for 452 Delta Alpha.
The altimeter is 2975 at Newark. Lear 2 Delta Alpha, flighting 020, vector ILS 6, Circle 1.
Okay, 020, 452 Delta Alpha.
The cockpit voice recording indicated that the captain questioned the reason for the vectors and assigned approach, because he told the second in command that they were still hundreds of miles away. About 26 seconds later, air traffic control gave a descent clearance.
Lear 2 Delta Alpha, descend and maintain 3,000.
3,000, 2 Delta Alpha.
After acknowledging the clearance, the captain realized that they were close to Teterboro and stated that they would be at Teterboro in 10 minutes. Air traffic control began providing radar vectors to intercept the localizer inbound course.
Lear 2 Delta Alpha, flighting at 090, intercept the 6 localizer, contact New York approach 127.6.
Okay, 127.6, fly heading 090 to intercept the 6 and the Teterboro, 452 Delta Alpha.
While attempting to join the localizer, the second in command mistook the Newark International Airport for Teterboro and told the captain that he had the runway in sight. The airplane flew through the localizer course of 060 degrees, and shortly after, air traffic control stated the following.
Lear Jet 2 Delta Alpha, make sure you intercept the localizer.
452 Delta Alpha, copy.
Lear Jet 2 Delta Alpha, left turn 20, heading for needed to join.
We got it, 452 Delta Alpha.
The airplane turned left and intercepted the localizer inbound. Air traffic control then directed the flight to the waypoint Vings.
Lear Jet 2 Delta Alpha, can you go to Vings? Can you do that? Vings, intercept localizer 6.
452 Delta Alpha, copy.
While the airplane was inbound to Vings, the second in command attempted to transfer the controls to the captain, but the captain did not respond and the second in command continued to fly the approach. Air traffic control cleared the airplane for the approach.
Lear Jet 452 Delta Alpha is 8 miles from Vings, cross Vings at 2,000 feet, clear ILS runway 6, circle runway 1.
Okay, cleared ILS 6, circle 1, Vings 2000, 452 Delta Alpha.
The pilots did not conduct an approach briefing before beginning the approach, contrary to published guidance in company manuals. The captain stated to the second command that they would be circling to runway 1 and would be descending to the circling minimums of 760 feet. The Teterboro Airport was located near Newark, John F. Kennedy, and LaGuardia airports. To avoid conflicts with those airports, aircraft landing at Teterboro when the wind is from the north are often vectored to approach from the west, then circle to land to the north on runway 1. The white line shows the ground tracks of previous aircraft flying the same circling approach that was assigned to the accident airplane. On the day of the accident, the wind was from the northwest at 16 to 20 knots, gusting to 32 knots. The initial approach clearance issued to the airplane was to fly the ILS runway 6 circle to runway 1. Airplanes flying this approach were typically told to circle at Torby, which was 3.8 nautical miles from the approach end of runway 6. After Torby, they would turn right and visually fly toward MetLife Stadium, and then turn left to line up with runway 1. About 3 minutes after receiving the approach clearance, air traffic control instructed the flight to do 3 things. 1. Contact Teterboro Tower. 2. Cross Dandy at 1,500 feet. 3. Circle at Torby.
Lear Jet 2 Delta Alpha, contact Teterboro Tower 190.5. Make sure you cross Dandy, 1,500 feet, circle at Torby.
All right, Dandy, 200 feet, circle at Torby, 925, 452 Delta Alpha.
Dandy at 1,500 feet, 2 Delta Alpha.
2015, 452 Delta Alpha.
The flight crew acknowledged these instructions but failed to do all 3. First, they did not contact the tower. Second, the airplane crossed Dandy at 2,000 feet instead of 1,500 feet. Third, they did not turn at Torby. From this point on, the movement of the white airplane symbol and radio communications occur in real time. As the airplane crossed Torby, the captain continued to instruct the second in command, improperly directing him to descend to the minimum descent altitude of 760 feet, while the airplane continued straight toward runway 6, instead of turning right at Torby and proceeding visually to the runway. 1.5 minutes later, the crew still had not switched to the tower radio frequency until told a second time by air traffic control.
2 Delta Alpha, contact Teterboro Tower 19.5.
155, 452 Delta Alpha.
The captain continued to instruct the second in command to descend to 760 feet instead of contacting the tower.
Lear 452 Delta Alpha, Teterboro Tower.
Yeah, we're up for the circling 1, 2 Delta Alpha.
Roger, Lear 452 Delta Alpha, wind 36016, gust 32, runway 1, continue traffic holding position.
452 Delta Alpha.
The airplane continued toward the airport as the captain instructed the second in command to stop the descent.
Air 2 Delta Alpha, runway 1, clear to land, safe parking.
We're going to be at Jet Aviation 452 Delta Alpha, clear to land 1.
When the airplane was about 1 nautical miles from the end of runway 6, the tower questioned the crew about the turn.
He's landing 5 Delta Alpha. You going to start that turn?
Yes, sir. We're doing it right now. 452 Delta Alpha.
While starting the turn to the right, the second in command told the captain, "Your flight controls," but the captain did not respond. The airplane lost 300 feet in the turn, and the enhanced ground proximity warning system sounded, 500 feet, and sink rate, pull up. The second in command asked the captain to take the flight controls again, and finally the captain took the controls, directed the second in command to watch the airspeed, and began a high bank left turn to runway 1. During the turn, the second in command called airspeed 4 times. The captain called out stall, as the second in command agreed and repeated airspeed twice. The enhanced ground proximity warning system sounded, sink rate, pull up. A security camera captured the airplane as it impacted the ground at a right bank angle of about 125 degrees. The airplane crashed in the parking lot less than 1 mile southeast of the Teterboro Airport about 15 seconds after the captain took the controls.
Now, some interesting points there, as you saw. The captain shouldn't really have had the second in command fly the airplane, but at the end of the day, the second in command should have been properly trained. I mean, having a second in command that's not allowed to fly the airplane, well, then what's the point of having him there? I mean, the whole point of having 2 pilots, and this is kind of a bit of a difference in the training they do in the United States compared to Europe. In Europe, when we train for what's called a type rating, so when you're learning to fly a new type of airplane, whether you're the captain or the first officer, you do exactly the same training, exactly the same exam. And then when you operate the airplane, one is the pilot flying and one is the pilot monitoring, and you take turns each. So one leg I'll fly, one leg, and the other guy will do the radio and the navigation and read the checklist, and then on the next leg we'll switch roles, and that just gives both pilots experience to flying the airplane. And it really is a team exercise. So I think one of the problems here was, of course, the training, the selection of the pilots first of all, and then the training. Now, pilots need to be trained in a certain way. It's quite clear here, briefings weren't done, and being a very short 25-minute flight, what I would have done is I would have briefed thoroughly for departure, en route, and also the approach, and sort of figured out, if we're going to do this approach, and taken time to do the approach. And if you don't have time in the air, just tell air traffic control you need to take up the hold. So you take up the hold and brief each other on what you're going to do. The pilot flying will brief the pilot monitoring on exactly how the approach is going to be flown, and what landing configuration we're going to have, what flap setting, speeds and all that kind of thing. That needs to be done before. As you saw from the video, there's a lot of confusion, and also there wasn't much confidence on behalf of the pilot flying, who was the first officer, who actually asked the captain to take over. So there's lots of confusion, and all of that could have been avoided if they had had proper training and they stuck to the standard operating procedures. So again, as I've said many times here on Biz Jet TV, if you are going to invest into a private jet, remember that the investment is not just in the aircraft, but you need to invest in the right people to fly the airplane. And so you need to hire the right people, give them enough training, and they need to structure themselves in a way where they can professionally and safely operate the airplane. Unfortunately, in this situation, that was not done. Is it the pilot's fault? Is it the company's fault? It's as every accident, it's never one reason that caused the accident. But certainly, the training and selection could have been done better, and conducting the flight in a certain way. Probably these pilots didn't know how to conduct the flight in the proper way, with following briefings and standard operating procedures, etc., defining their roles. I think on the company's side, the fact that they had a second in command which wasn't allowed to do the flying, that is not good, and that's not a good thing. So if you are looking at chartering a jet, I would certainly ask questions about how the pilots are trained. This is really, really important. The second in command should be trained at the same level as the pilot in command. even though he or she may have less experience, they should be trained at the same level and meet the same requirements. I think that's really, really important because, if suddenly the PIC feels ill or incapacitated or whatnot, the other one has the confidence and the training and the experience to be able to bring the aircraft safely to the ground. So that's really my take on that. So again, pilot training, standardization, crew resource management, which is another aspect which is really important, which does encompass all this. Crew resource management is very, very important, where the pilots study accidents, understand how accidents have happened, and there are systems in place to prevent these things from happening, which is a bit the purpose of these type of episodes that we're doing on Biz Jet TV, is having a look at the private jet accidents, understanding why they happened and what systems can be put in place to prevent this from happening again. And that's really why we do this. So crew resource management training, or human factors training as it's also called, is very important that your pilots do this every year, where they sit around a table, look at a number of incidents and accidents, understand why they happened, and then have a system in place to prevent this from happening. That's really, really important. So as I always say, just to summarize my philosophy here, there are 3 elements to buying a private jet. One is the aeroplane, the second are the pilots and their training, and the third is the maintenance and how that's done. That's very, very important. So that's all from me on this episode. So please comment below, like this video if you liked it, and also subscribe to this channel. And that's all from Fab Poli at Biz Jet TV, and I'll see you on the next one.